When I was a little girl, I never understood why I felt so anxious all the time, like I had a pit in the bottom of my stomach. I was constantly on edge, constantly stressed. I was always worried about tomorrow when today hadn't even passed. For years, I thought that was just my personality. I was sensitive or anxious. But as I got older, I started to learn that my feelings and my behaviors were actually the result of trauma. Trauma doesn't just affect emotions. It changes how the brain works. It rewires the parts of the brain that controls fear, memory, and decision making, often leaving people feeling stuck in a constant state of alert even when they're safe. Today, I want to share with you guys how trauma affects the brain, what parts of the brain are impacted the most, and why understanding these changes is such an important step in healing. You may ask, what is trauma? Well, according to the American Psychological Association, trauma is an emotional response to a deeply distressing or disturbing event that overwhelms a person's ability to cope. And trauma can stem from anything. It can stem from abuse, neglect, losing a loved one suddenly, growing up in a toxic or chaotic household, and witnessing a violence. This can be a single event, or it can happen consistently over time. And everyone is affected by trauma differently. Two people can share the same experience, but have two completely different reactions to that experience. This is because how the brain responds to the event. One person may feel deeply emotionally connected to the event, while the other does not. And that's because trauma isn't just a stored memory. It changes how our bodies and our brains react to the world around us. How does trauma affect the brain? There are three parts of the brain that contribute to how trauma affects these parts of the brain. First is the amygdala. The amygdala is the brain's alert system. It detects threats and triggers the fight or flight in your nervous system. After experiencing trauma, this part of your brain can become overreactive, often sending danger signals even when a person is completely safe. This explains why a person may feel constantly on edge, jumpy, or anxious. Your hippocampus, which helps store and organize your memories, which is also affected by trauma. Trauma shrinks and weakens this area, making it more difficult to tell the difference between the past and the present. This can often leave people feeling stuck, like they're re-experiencing the trauma over again. Lastly, you have the prefrontal cortex. This helps with decision making, emotional control, and logic. This specific part of the brain becomes less active after enduring trauma. This makes it harder to calm down and stay steady under pressure, and especially during stress. The areas we just talked about are the areas of the brain that are affected most by trauma, which is the amygdala, hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. These parts of the brain work together, so when trauma changes them, it can affect a person's emotions, memory, and sense of safety all at once. That's why trauma isn't just something that goes away. It leaves a constant, lasting imprint on how the brain functions. Understanding trauma and why it's important for healing is very important. Trauma isn't a weakness, it's the brain protecting us. All of the parts of the brain that we talked about work to try to protect us. So when we endure trauma, sometimes those parts of the brain can become overreactive or not reactive, like we talked about. Knowing about trauma helps with guilt and shame. This can help others connect to others who have also endured trauma and make them feel less guilty and shameful about what they had to go through. And there are many treatment options for people that have endured trauma. There is therapy and treatments like EMDR, trauma-focused CBT, and mindfulness that can help calm the brain and rebuild a sense of safety, like meditation. It changes the question from what's wrong with me to what happened to me. And that's where real healing can begin. And I can sincerely relate to that one. In conclusion, when I think back to that little girl who was always anxious and scared, I understand her now. My brain wasn't broken. It was trying to protect me from things that I couldn't understand or handle. Learning how trauma affects the brain helped me realize that the way I felt wasn't my fault. And I felt like it was my fault for a long time. It showed me that my reactions were normal for what I went through. Trauma definitely changes the brain. Over time, your brain can learn that it's safe again. And to me, That's what makes all of this so powerful. Knowing that no matter what we've been through, healing is possible, even when it feels impossible. If you would like to do more research on how trauma affects the brain, here are some resources I provided if you would like to look into that. Thank you guys. I hope you guys were able to learn a little bit about how trauma affects the brain.